Two asymmetric pearls, two wow ball motions. It's the Innovator and the Katana Assault. Hey team, and welcome back to the channel. I'm really excited to talk about these two new asymmetrical balls from the Radical lineup. I'm sure you guys are all here to learn about the new skid flip monster that is the new Katana Assault. But first, I feel like it's my responsibility to do my diligence and talk about the Innovator. I should have when I came out because it's a Mo Legacy series and Mo meant so much to me. I've got my new Innovator shirt on here. But not only is it important just in terms of it being a Legacy series ball, but it actually has some really cool core tech and some cool cover tech that I didn't get a chance to talk about before. So we're going to dive into it right now, starting with this new core design. This is a version of the offset core design that started with the 1997 original 3D offset in the Hammer lineup, of course Mo Pennell's design there. And if this is what I would call a Gen 3 version of it, because longtime Radical fans will remember the original black Reax, and of course the Reax Pearl, which had the same core in it, and that's what I would consider to be kind of a Gen 2 version of offset technology, where you have the two caps on top and bottom that are basically centralized under the pin axis of the ball, and then the middle core body is offset toward the mass bias. And that's what we have here in this new Innovator core. I'm not sure if they name it, but it has 053 total differential, an intermediate differential of 012, and you can see that the mass is offset toward the mass bias so that when you drill your thumb into it, you're going to hit that pretty readily, and that gives you the ability to blow up the post-drilled differential numbers so you get a little performance boost in the post-drilled numbers when you're drilling into it. The upper cap is just a little narrower compared to the bottom cap so that your fingers don't hit it, so it doesn't have a scoop or a knob on top like some of the other core designs, but that upper cap is just a little narrower so that unless you're drilling kind of in the area of the pin with your fingers, you primarily miss that compared to the size of the lower cap, which has a little bit more mass. In lieu of a flip cap or higher density piece on the bottom, you have just a more massive lower cap. So all of that technology all together is kind of the culmination of a lot of things that we've already seen in the Radical lineup, making sure that you don't hit the fingers with the core, making sure that the post-drilled intermediate diff is blown up by the thumb entering the side of the core, gives you a little more intermediate. All of the Radical things are in this design, and it's really cool to see the design kind of progress where they've married some old technology with some new technology to give you this core that rolls really well. And on a personal note, we were able to do some testing with this core behind the scenes in a couple different configurations to see what the best back-ending motion was for a more benchmark asymmetrical ball. So some additional testing went into the background of this core before it was produced in the version that you see it now, the production ball. So all told, like a very important ball in the Radical lineup and a very good benchmark shape where the intermediate diff is not too high, the total diff offers plenty of flare potential for fresh conditions, and pairing that with a pearlized cover stock, we'll cover in a second, you get a ball motion that's very versatile for an asymmetrical ball. Of course, this one has dynamic core in it. That gives you the ability to have a little more hitting power than our standard inner core material as a pro performance ball in the Radical lineup. Of course, they're all going to have dynamic core. And this one has the Motion Magic plus pearlized cover stock in it. Now, the original Motion Magic cover stock on the original Trailblazer is where this cover base is originally from, but this Motion Magic Plus version is a lot more from the mid lane to the pins. I feel like this one definitely does it a little more justice on the back of the lane, where the original Motion Magic cover in its compounded format was just a little slow and a little smooth. That original Trailblazer, I think, had the potential to be a little sharper off the spot with a different cover pairing, and this one kind of writes that with a really fairly aggressive pearlized cover formulation. I think where the Katana's ultra sharp and kind of a head turning motion, this ball has a really good mid lane security and offers a really strong sweeping motion throughout the whole body of the lane for a pearlized reactive ball. And you'll see the differences when we get to the comparison chart. Moving over now to check out this brand new Katana Assault. This thing should have you guys salivating. It is really sharp, and that's aided of course by the new Katana asymmetrical core. This is actually a replacement. It is a brand new core. It's not the same core that was in the original katanas, although it pulls most of its design features from those original katanas, but it has an added twist. It's got this flip puck at the bottom that's a higher density piece that's gonna allow the core to unload at the back of the lane a little better than the previous katana did. You have to remember that the original katana was designed when balance holes were in play, so very much you could blow up the intermediate diffs, get a little more mid lane or a little more back end motion depending on where you place those balance holes. Now without that extra added tool in the bag, this core had to be beefed up just a little bit in order to make it change direction like you expect a katana do, and that you expect a katana would, and I think that this core meets or exceeds that expectation. It has really similar numbers, only slightly changed. It's 2501 5120, so really close to the original katana numbers. The nose is sticking out just a little longer. The top of the core flows just a little differently. All of these were design tricks that Moe's designer Steve was able to manipulate in this new Katana 2.0, we'll call it, core in order to give you the best back-ending motion without the use of balance holes possible. And of course that big nose, a signature of the Katana series, sticks out toward the mass bias so that if you put a layout on this ball that puts the thumb in the mass bias, then you'll drill out some of that core and you'll get an even higher differential, which will make the ball change direction even more aggressively when it sees friction. Of course, like any other Pro Performance Radical ball, this one has dynamic core for harder hitting power in the outer core, and this is wrapped in the brand new HK22 Hyperkinetic 22 cover stock. Now, Radical doesn't name their cover stock. They didn't have like a tag name on it or any indication of what additive package is in it. They just called it the Hyperkinetic 22 pearlized cover stock. This one is a pearl. It's going to be the cleanest version of this in terms of length down the lane in response to friction, but I do think this is what I would consider a mid-lane additive package. So it's not just the HK22 in its bare formula. It does have some additives in there, and that makes this ball a beautiful combination of mid-lane response and back-end motion. You don't want this ball going 55 feet and then changing directions like knifing on you. You do need some ability to control this ball and control the breakpoint shape. So the mid lane package kind of gives you the best of both worlds. The HK22, practically allergic to practically allergic to oil, generates very little friction in the front of the lane as it's gliding through its skid phase, but slows down really rapidly relative to any other cover base that Radical's ever had, so that the change of direction at the back of the lane is kind of sudden and abrupt and responsive in the ways that bowlers want when they want to open up the lane and just dig in and send it. This is the ball. We're going to take a look at the comparison chart and show you the nuanced differences between these ball motions and let you decide which one you think you want in your bag, or if you could have both to complement your arsenal. This chart should look very familiar to you. It's the chart that's on radicalbowling.com. I make them for both places. Mine is just a fraction different. Mine's every ball for the entire calendar year, regardless if it's discontinued or not. And Radical Bowling's has every ball in their current product plan, regardless if they're discontinued before the year is up or if they go on if they're a good seller. So if you want to revisit this chart, just go to radicalbowling.com, click on the latest bowling ball, scroll down to the bottom to the resources section, and then just click the link for comparison chart. It'll bring up the PDF. And of course they're archived too. If you go back in time and look at a previous ball, then the previous chart will also be available at the bottom of that page. We're going to talk about the Innovator and the Katana Assault and how they compare to one another, starting with the Innovator. Built to handle a medium-heavy amount of total oil volume, and it sits kind of in the middle of the chart in terms of response, but a little toward the sharper responding section. For an asymmetric pearl, it's actually a little smooth overall, but it's a very round kind of continuous motion, and I don't think it's any slouch in terms of back-end performance. The difference is it has a pretty long hook window, meaning it starts early in the mid lane and continues to hook throughout the back of the lane, as compared to a ball that hook sets or a ball that gets down the lane and makes one sharp motion. This ball, in my verbiage, kind of hooks throughout the belly of the lane, which is why I said that it's not the quickest responding ball, but it certainly is a ball that is strong enough and yet sharp enough that it's very versatile. At 12 intermediate differential, this ball is not going to be the sharpest asymmetrical ball or the strongest asymmetrical ball. It's kind of that sweet spot of versatility where it's going to have more punch at the back of the lane than a typical symmetrical ball. It'll close up the back of the lane from more open angles better than a symmetrical ball will, but at the same time, it's not so sharp or so early or so forward compared to some asymmetrical balls that it becomes unusable. I think the best way to put it is it's simply a benchmark asymmetrical ball. If you're a rev dominant player, you're going to absolutely love being able to dig in on the fresh oil and send this ball away. If you're a match player, this is a perfect step down from a Trailblazer or a Crypto when you need a little more length, but you still want that mid lane security and you don't want a compounded or polished ball that's going to just skip the mid lane, which can happen with some of the weaker, cleaner asymmetrical balls. This one is not that. This one will dig. And if you're a speed dominant player, I could definitely see this one as a second or third option in your bag. But more than that, I feel like it would actually be quite useful on fresh as an asymmetric pearlized bowling ball on more medium conditions. You could even touch the surface with maybe a 3000 pad or a 2000 pad. Make sure it starts in the right part of the lane for you, because if this ball does start up, it will absolutely close the door at the back of the lane for you. Just making sure you're getting the ball to read the right part of the lane is kind of the key, and that's good general advice, not specific to this ball in particular. By comparison, the Katana Assault is built for a little more medium volumes, but it is sharp. It is the sharpest ball currently on the Radical chart, as you can see. I might get a little bit of debate about where I place this ball on the chart. I would say that this ball back ends more, certainly, than any ball on the chart, but also because there's so much back end on this ball, it has the potential to probably out-hook a couple of the balls that are kind of surrounding it. The Bigfoots, the Innovator, maybe even the Crypto, if the conditions are right. If you're on medium oil conditions with a fairly fresh front end, like oil with a good response or good bounce off of the right, or off of the outside, I should say, then yeah, the Katana Assault has the potential to out-hook just about any ball that you can pick up, just because it's such a quick hook window at the back of the lane from the late mid lane to the pins. But I don't necessarily that means it's built for heavier oil conditions than those balls, even if it does cover a few extra boards than them, especially at the back of the pattern, because you definitely want friction to develop with this ball. You don't want to use it on a fresh heavy oil condition or an extremely flooded condition in general. You know, the HK22 cover is naturally clean in its own right. It's in a pearlized version, which is going to help it get down the lane and read the back of the lane better, but it's also compounded as well, so that's just exacerbating how clean this Katana Assault is. So, you know, I feel like you're going to want to wait for the friction to develop. This is one of those stand left, throw right machines that you're going to want to utilize. I don't think it does that well from square angles. If you're a player that has trouble getting the ball off of the back of the pattern from more square angles, then I could see some utility in that. But for the most part, for match players or high rev players, when the friction opens up, the mid lanes start to open up, the heads start to go, you can take one big step left on the approach, or big step in, if I should not exclude the lefties here, one big step in on the approach and be able to send this one away with more launch angle than you're using with either the symmetrical Bigfoot lineup or even the Innovator, and it'll get cleaner through the front of it. Make you a little nervous because you're wondering if it's going to see it, and then it'll just boomerang off the back of the lane and get back to the pocket. So it's a very fun ball motion, but it also has really good utility. In today's modern game with the high concentration of oil in the front and the scorching back ends, sometimes these skid flip balls are a little bit of a risk, but the reward is really high, because if you can generate the entry angle that you can with the Katana Assault, your carry percentage is going to go up. Yeah, what more can you say? These are high performance machines, sports cars in a sense, right? They have the big engines, they have the latest tire technology, they are ready to grip. And they're available now at your local pro shop. Make sure you swing in and grab one or both. I can see the utility in having both, especially if you have good success with asymmetrical pearls. And if you don't, the Katana Assault might be the one to try. A new cover base, just absolute digging machine at the back of the lane. But yeah, just make smart decisions if you decide to pick up both. Make sure that you maybe give yourself complementary layouts, and maybe even modify the surface on one of them to give yourself a little separation. I don't think you have to fear too much overlap. They're available now at your local pro shop. And since you're here, make sure you like and subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook pages, Bowling Buckosh. I make new video releases as the new products from the brands of Brunswick come out. So until next time, thanks for watching.